Welcome to the Movement Podcast. This show is all about movement, giving you a better idea of how you can optimize the human body to be the best it can be.
So the majority of people that enter into a gym or start working out are trying to do one of two things, or really both. And I'm in that bucket. And I think, Gray, you and I both are in that bucket right now because we're not athletes anymore. I mean, we used to be. But it's you want to look good and you want to feel good, which means you want to lose a few pounds. Some want to lose more than others. And you don't want to have any pain. And you want to be able to get through the day without significant dysfunction. Can I tie my shoes in the morning? Can I, go out and walk the dogs without, having some issues? And I think that brings us, the thing with not just pain and dysfunction, but diet. And, the question we always get is, if someone's coming in to lose 25 pounds and we're going to do a movement screen on them, how do I explain how doing a movement screen can help them lose weight? And, throwing out just some basic data and research, we know that if you've got a poor movement screen, that you're more likely to be overweight. BMI is elevated. If you're elevated in BMI, again, not saying BMI is the best way to do it, but let's just take it for what it's worth. General population wise, your FMS scores are lower. So you're not going to move as well if you are overweight. You're just not. Years ago, Gray, I used to get the question on the rotary stability test we used to do, where in quadruped, you go out and come back in and say, well, Lee, what if their gut gets in the way and they can't touch their elbow or their knee? I'm like, it's a 1 because their gut got in the way. It doesn't mean I'm going to go give them a bunch of correctives. It means we need to address the elephant in the room, maybe literally, with the weight. So they do go hand in hand, and it's the chicken or the egg. Someone could get to a point where they're overweight, maybe significantly, and their movements are going to be negatively impacted. You start moving poorly, what are you going to stop doing? You're going to stop exercising. You're going to start moving as much as you would. You may start eating a little bit more, and lo and behold, you're now overweight and can't move. So they do go hand in hand, and movement, just like diet, if we really want to make a change, we got to change behaviors.
We do. And first and foremost, if I'm speaking as Gray Cook physical therapist, when I ask a nutritional question, for obvious reasons, the first thing I sort of talk about is inflammatory food. I've experienced them. I've got Lyme's disease. There's certain foods that I don't eat anymore and my metabolism doesn't handle a few. So if I want to make my musculoskeletal pain worse, I can drink a bunch of beer, eat a lot of carbs, and not limit my sugar. And what inflammation I naturally carry because of my athletic bang up history is definitely made worse by that. Another thing that makes it worse is getting dehydrated. I go into cramps pretty quick. And so I am proactive on hydration. I know that most of my patients with low back pain or some degree of chronic musculoskeletal pain are not sleeping great. They're probably not breathing great. They're probably not eating great. They are going to get bit every time they try to get active. And so even though the ones that might be motivated to do a few things better don't even know where to start. And that's exactly where we found ourselves with the movement screen, because back in the mid 90s, there was a thing called functional exercise. We didn't invent that shit. It's been there. What we said is, everybody thinks they're doing it, right? That's almost like opening eyeglasses clinic without an eye chart and assuming everybody needs eyeglasses. No, if you can see all this and it's not blurry, you don't need eyeglasses. Walk on. If you can do all these and you get 2s and 3s, you're functional. Walk on. Whatever you're doing is keeping you functional. I could make your pecs get bigger or I could help you lose weight, but at least you're leveled up. You don't have an imbalance that I've got to deal with. Whereas if we throw general exercise and movement dysfunction, we know we're going to get a problem. What if 50% of your movement dysfunction is your lifestyle? We learned that in military studies when we screened the same group that's sleep deprived and dehydrated, they dropped 3 points. If I didn't know what they just came from, I'd be giving them a foam roll and a corrective. When instead I'm like, hey, drink a bunch of stuff and go sleep. Oh, we got 3 points on the movement screen. If that's good enough, then you were functional and impaired temporarily, as opposed to being dysfunctional.
Well, and great. That's why we developed the functional wellness screen. not that we just wanted to have another test for us to do. It's how we how we figured out, I guess, is maybe a better word, how important those lifestyle components will impact your ability to move well. And it's really about the outcomes.
Yeah.
We're screening all these factors because we want to get better outcomes. And in order to get better outcomes, we got to figure out what's the most efficient way to start the person on the right path.
It is. And the most efficient way is, let's not deny the truth that's laying in front of us. Obesity is associated with metabolic and musculoskeletal disorders at a higher rate than almost anything else that's acceptable in our current culture. If you got a balance issue and I don't alert you with that, I'm irresponsible. If you are overweight and it's connected to a lot of bad things you're headed for, I'm just going to tell you the truth about it. I had a patient the other day who has an elective back fusion opportunity. It's not an emergency. There's no neurological impairment. Reflexes are down on one side, but it's been that way for a while. So his doctor has suggested if things get worse, we might be looking at a fusion. He wanted to be proactive and go ahead and get the fusion. And I looked at him and I'm like, would you agree you're 45 pounds overweight? He goes, yeah. I said, do you sleep well? He goes, no. I'm like, do you ever drink water? He goes, absolutely not. And I'm like, what's your activity level? And he said, farm work. And I said, I think your next 2 months would be better invested taking a fitness approach within the confines of physical therapy. Your doctor will easily refer you for physical therapy, but you're here to move better and lose weight. And quickly, he volunteered. I drink 4 Dr. Peppers a day. I'm like, do you realize there's a product on Amazon right now that tastes just like Dr. Pepper with 0 calories? And it's got Stevie. He goes, will it taste the same? I'm like, you're not a baby. Get over it. Drink 4 of those a day. You'll be fine. And the funny thing was, 10 years ago, I would have withheld that and stayed in my musculoskeletal lane. Guy's heading for a fusion. There's no way he's not heading for a fusion. He's sleep deprived. He's dehydrated. He's not breathing well. He's doing farm work. And he already is a candidate for a fusion. What I just tried to do was remove the 6 risk factors that he's getting ready to go into surgery with. Because if we could take him down to 2, oh, by the way, he's a type 2 diabetic, but he probably won't be in about 6 weeks. You see what I'm saying? So this guy is medicated so he can continue a lifestyle that's toxic.
Right. It's about, you mentioned the word baggage. If he, in this example, goes and does the surgery without addressing those other areas, he's going to be in worse situation, in worse shape after 6 months, a year after that surgery. His back may feel a little bit better, but over time, he's going to get in worse position.
And let's be honest, I've had really, really good conversations with some wonderful surgeons lately who literally don't want to cut on a bad candidate. Because, outside of your own personal outcomes and your own personal agenda of being as good a result outcome-oriented clinician as possible, nobody wants bad outcomes just because we don't want to waste our time or theirs. So my whole point is there is a right time to do something. And let me just get this off my chest real quick. The word wellness is bullshit because for 30 years it's been in our language. It was part of my exercise science training, and wellness is too timid to step on healthcare and too light duty to challenge fitness. Wellness is just this thing where if you're not sick and a little bit fitter than most people, we're just going to call you well. Let me do with the word wellness what I tried to do with the word function early in my career. Bullshit. That's a functional exercise. Prove it. That's a functional exercise. Prove it. It's not changing function. Therefore, by definition of the word, it ain't what you say it is. I didn't want to be part of that. So I had a huge desire to find out which exercises actually fostered, healed, recalibrated function and which ones didn't. Because as a physical therapist, I can't waste a day, right? Now, will I get you 100% in your rehab with me? No. But that's why I'm also a strength coach. Because after I discharge you and say, Lee, this is what you got to do to fully recover from your hernia and stuff like that, this is what you got to do. And if you're doing it right, your movement patterns will look like this. I wanted that operational expertise. I don't care if you follow my advice or not. I'm 80% right out of my mouth. And if I have some feedback, I'll keep us right on that 80%. I'm not 100%. Nobody is that is born of man.
Well, but let's clarify that a little bit, because we had a functional wellness screen, but your point in saying that all this stuff about wellness that's been thrown at us over the last 25, 30 years.
Because we're not as well as we were 30 years ago.
We have data that even will say that we put so much resources, money, time, energy into wellness. And what wellness primarily is, when you look at the marketplace, is simple education. You need to stop smoking. You need to eat right. You need to exercise, giving you all of this information about how to live your life a little bit better. And we're worse. The data will say your health is worse now, on just generally speaking, than what it was 25, 30 years ago. Now, we could point the finger in any number of directions, but I think what your point is, Gray, we need to start, and what we're advocating is start by figuring out where your baseline is. Where are you today? And what do you need to focus on? Your story about your back patient is no different than someone entering into the gym, right? Is what are your outcomes? If someone comes in to see me as a strength coach, I'm already thinking about, okay, what is this person's goals and what do I need to do to get them better? But as soon as they walk into the door, you're already thinking that way. Are they limping? Are they overweight? What do they look like? Just, you're already making those assumptions and things like that. But now collect some more data to figure out how much more baggage do they have that I didn't see, that we didn't uncover. The movement screen is one piece, but a lot of these lifestyle components, we have to bring those to the forefront to see how much baggage the person has, so we can then figure out what are the outcomes are going to look like. Is this person going to get better in 2 weeks, or is it going to take me longer? So their expectations can be, so they can become a little bit more aware of their expectations. But more importantly, when we talk about functional wellness, Gray, and even going back to what we learned using the functional movement screen, the first step by collecting this data is for me as the professional, but it's also for them to figure out where they are. And it's about awareness. All right, let's take a quick break here to tell you about Symmio. Symmio is our holistic wellness platform designed to give you the tools and resources to assess, manage, and improve your clients' and patients' overall health and wellness. Go to Symmio.com to sign up for a free trial today. That's SYMMIO.com.
We got 2 new courses I think you'll like. One's a deep dive on mobility and one's a deep dive on stability. We really unpack that and show you how simple single corrective exercises aren't nearly as good as a meal of mobility assembled in a flow, in a set of stations. Do the same thing for stability. It's sort of a new way of looking at things, but it's that same old functional approach, just with nice packages that actually give you huge dividends.
And now let's pick up where we left off.
The reason I had to call the word wellness bullshit is because I want to scrub the bullshit off of wellness if I'm going to use it correctly. When I look at health, that is your current state of readiness. It's based on your vital signs and other pertinent information that we need to collect on you. Fitness is also a sort of testament to your current state of readiness. If somebody's got a physical and they pass their bench press 40-yard dash, you assume they're ready for football. These 2 things, health and fitness, demonstrate a statistical and measured state of readiness. And if I were talking to the military, that's what I would say. That's the role of health. That's the role of fitness. So what the hell is wellness? It's a projection of future health and fitness. Therefore, it is based on those 2 things plus risk factors. So believe it or not, wellness is your current state of risk, health is your current state of readiness, and fitness is your current state of readiness, because you got to be ready right now to do something. If I was basically talking about my patient, you're not ready for a fusion. You can't handle a fusion. And if you absolutely needed one, then I would say go for it. You got to do what you got to do. But if you could go into that surgery with the same anatomy, but 4 less risk factors, I think you'd do better. Your back still mechanically needs to be fused or maybe debrided or something like that. But from anesthesia to overnight hospital stay to blood pressure, triglycerides, all of that, type 2 diabetes and the healing rate of type 2 as opposed to non-diabetic. But here's where we have screwed up on the projection game. There's a thing right now in healthcare called pre-diabetes. And if you got pre-diabetes, there's an 80% chance you're getting diabetes, which means we set the mark for pre-diabetes too close to frickin' diabetes. Move it on down the line a little bit more, right? And go ahead and use the word pre-diabetic earlier, and maybe you won't get diabetics 80% of the time. The risk factors for somebody who's got hypertension are nearly the same as somebody who's on a hypertensive medication. We lowered the numbers so you pass your physical, but your risk factors aren't the same. So we don't really process risk factors as data points like we should. And so if you tell me there's such a thing as a functional wellness screen, the first thing I need is a black and white binary approach, okay? So if you got a 1 on the movement screen, I put my name on it, that's a dysfunction. You don't want too many of those. You got a 0 on the movement screen, that's pain. You don't want a lot of that because it's actually trending down. Things are going to get worse. So that was our baseline. We now have a cut point on a simple breathing screen that anybody can do anywhere. All you need is a set of lungs and a chair, right? And a timer. We basically have a sleep survey that's not of our design, but at least puts you in a category where we should investigate your sleep deeper. It is a risk factor. Your hip to waist ratio, your BMI or your body comp, believe it or not, if it indicates you're obese or morbidly obese, that's a risk factor, metabolically or musculoskeletally. And when we tally up these risk factors, the one thing I think we all got to get our head around is they don't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 plus 1 is not 2, okay? Because each of these risk factors is a complicating, compounding factor of the other. So poor breathing can give you poor sleep, can give you poor metabolism, can give you poor repair, right? Well, my knee hurts.
Right.
Well, you got to breathe better. You got to sleep better. You got to eat better, you know.
Well, we started the conversation talking about the relationship between movement and diet because that's what most people walk in the door. They want to look good and feel good. Well, now we've kind of gotten to this conversation about wellness. And really that is the conversation, is if you've got all of those risk factors, if you're checking all those boxes, let's be honest, Greg, we're sitting here today. I'm sure I'm checking a couple. I'm sure you're checking a couple of those problems. But you can't expect a person to go in and just start training and start getting the outcomes that they want and you want if they've got a laundry list of those things without attacking the one that is most problematic.
Right.
That's the whole thing we're really trying to get to.
Now, it's never been easier than before because FMS is first and foremost about monitoring. You said it by the fact that if we preemptively get a baseline movement screen on an athlete, whether they have a concussion or a broken leg, we can tell you when they're back from a movement standpoint, from a body awareness, from a proprioceptive kinesthetic standpoint, because it's a pretty democratic test. If you get a concussion and your movement screen drops 4 points, but you can count backwards really well, then that means your cognition is good, but your motor control ain't. I don't know if you're ready to go on the field or not, but neurologists did their part. They worked on the cognition. If I got a movement screen baseline and maybe even better, a Y balance test, I can tell you when this concussion's over, when this neck problem is over, when this back problem is over, when this sports hernia is over. It's about monitoring. Now, can we do that with breathing, sleep, nutritional awareness, and BMI right now? Yeah, that's easy to monitor. Matter of fact, most kids are walking around with a watch that'll track their sleep, their breathing, and take a picture of the food they're eating all at the same time. So my point is, monitoring is here. So every time somebody screens poorly in movement, sleep, breathing, activity level, whatever we want to look at, we can suggest that it be monitored. So instead of calling 911 and telling somebody who's got consistently bad sleep that they need to have a sleep study, right? I'm not trying to sell them a CPAP because that's all that's for. What I'm really trying to do is get them aware of how many things they can do to level up sleep. Oh, Red Bulls at 8 p.m. are not good for sleep. Watching TV at midnight is not good for sleep. Sleeping in an unbelievably hot room is not good for sleep. So there's a lot you can do right away. And so right now, most people take general advice about wellness. They do the easiest things there are to do to consider themselves well, not the things that they screen poorly.
Right, not the thing that makes them the most uncomfortable.
I'm getting your Dr. Pepper, Lee. I'm taking, Right. But the funny thing is, most people are going to clutch it like a blankie. But if you've got a 4-year-old still holding on to a blankie, if you truly explain to them it's going to interfere with a lot of other things, they'll let go of it.
Well, one of the key things I think you said right there is monitoring. And we learned that with the functional movement screen. And I think it took some researchers to point it out, not to us, but maybe to them, that, movement changes based off of a lot of different factors, based off your behaviors. So if I movement screen you today and we get you moving better, well, 6 weeks from now, you may regress due to any number of factors, Gray. Maybe you flew on a plane. Maybe you didn't have a good night's sleep. Maybe you're under a lot of stress. That's why your movement screen went down, because of your lifestyle and behaviors, not because the movement screen's an unreliable thing. So when you say monitoring, it's no different than monitoring your sleep. I may have gotten a great night's sleep last night, but this weekend, after a couple of drinks, I may not sleep as well. So we need to understand that, you use the word balance or level up. It's like a roller coaster. It's going to go up and down. The key component is don't let it stay down too far, and don't have a lot of these factors we're talking about with sleep, hydration, nutrition, your stress level, your movements. Don't have a lot of those things down all at once.
Right. And just so you know, quick sidebar, Danielle's got a new car. And when I drive it, it tells me when I'm not dead center in the middle of that lane. Beep, 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 beep. Hey, turn this thing off. The whole car's vibrating. And then we have an argument about that. She said, well, if you could drive straighter. But see, I drive old Jeeps and farm trucks.
Well, that's your lifestyle anyway. You're never going to be in the middle of the road. You're going to be up or down, one way or the other.
I see where the lines are, and I'm using the whole lane, and I'm doing just fine. I mind that, and I disabled it, and I turned it off. But I've also got an Oura ring that says I'm not sleeping well enough, and I listen to that because I'm a pretty safe driver, and I got a record to prove it. But I'm a pretty shitty sleeper, and I got a record to prove it. So I don't need my driving monitored. I don't think just yet, but if Danielle and a couple of police officers tell me I need to monitor my driving, then I'll monitor that. But I know for a fact that my sleep is probably one of my weakest links. And, originally when you and I were going around working in high-end athletics in the military, and we were sort of dropping the movement screen baseline and our philosophy and this whole level up thing, and get to the weakest link as soon as you can, watch the weakest link as soon as you can, try to change the weakest link as quick as you can. That was sort of our philosophy. And we simply managed athletes and soldiers better. We just did. A lot of people tried to prove how we were doing that. You and I were doing a lot of stuff other than just making them step over a hurdle and lunge. We were having a lot of conversations about why you're doing that lift. So when we would do an install, we would get in conversations about kettlebells, sleep, nutrition, stretching, foam rolling versus massage. We would do all of that. So when we would leave a military establishment or a team, we would level them up on a lot more than just here's how to do a movement screen. And they did better. And we got the stats in the history to prove it. But I don't know if you can put a bunch of people in a petri dish and just movement screen them and think that you leveled them up. So the movement screen is a hammer when you need it. The wellness screen is a screwdriver when you need it. The FCS is a wrench when you need it. And the YBT is a magnifying glass when you need it. And I don't try to use one of those tools to do what the other does. What you and I realized is we had a lot of colleges that were old and new to the movement screen, meaning these are colleges in Virginia that had used the movement screen, and then somebody moved on somewhere else and a new person came in and said, what's this? What's this thing? So we went in to level them up, and we found out they were short-staffed and overwhelmed. And we actually said, you know what? You'd be better off putting them on our wellness app pre-season because it's got a movement screen light built right in it. And since you don't have enough staff to movement screen everybody when they come back pre-season, I'd movement screen the red flags first. And the ones that had a red flag on sleep, I just call them out and have a talk with them. And the ones that lit up nutrition or the ones that had a past medical history, whatever they light up, you can now prioritize what you want to talk about with that athlete. So, back in the old days when we had 5 interns, screen everybody and let's get this thing over with. Now we got one person that knows how to screen. I'd screen the people who a remote screen lit up first. It is a simple David and Goliath thing. Most people come to me with their budgetary and time constraint excuses saying, well, I simply can't do a better job. I don't have the resources. Shit. Our resources didn't change with or without the movement screen. We invented the movement screen within the workday. We weren't given a grant. We weren't sponsored by anybody. We invented it. We tooled it up. We put it in play. It made our day run smoother after we got over the growing pains. And then all of a sudden somebody tells me I'm scared of the growing pains. Well, then don't grow up. Don't grow up. So the functional wellness screen has actually forced me to eat my own meal, to grow up a little bit when I talk about wellness. And for a few moments, I said, well, shouldn't I be a nutrition, sleep, and breathing expert to comment on these things? Not to screen them, I don't, right? I know how to get you to a specialist, and I know how to tell you to monitor it. And if it gets better without a specialist, then we got it. And if it doesn't, then you're going to meet them. That's that. It's over.
If you want to learn more about today's podcast or dive deeper into functional movement systems information, check out some of the resources and offers we're providing in the description. That will do it for this episode of the Movement Podcast.
Thanks for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please take a minute and subscribe and review.
If you want to learn more about our system and take the next step in your own movement journey,
visit us at movementpod.com.
Until next time, be sure to first move well,
then move often.